It feels like it has been an insanely long amount of time since I last did a sketchbook chore. This specific sketchbook is a Mossery sketchbook. I know lots of people are going to ask about it. I have many things to say about this sketchbook in this video. This is one of their spiral bound sketchbooks because at the time I received this, which it was a Christmas gift from one of my close friends, at the time I received this, they did not do bound sketchbooks. Now they do, I believe. From what I've seen, I think they do bound sketchbooks. But this is a Mossery sketchbook with one of the Haikala covers, which Haikala is one of my favorite artists, so I really wanted this sketchbook for a long time. I haven't had a spiral bound sketchbook for probably around like 3 or 4 years now. I used to solely use spiral bound sketchbooks way back when because I was very comfortable just using the Canson XL mixed media sketchbooks. I use those all the time. Those were my main sketchbook in terms of what actual paper I was using, unless I was gifted something else, but I used those for years and years, but especially after I got into watercolors, that's when I started going towards other sketchbooks, and I tried my first bound sketchbook. Life-changing. So this is my first spiral bound in a really long time. It's also the first sketchbook I finished in a really long time. I used to try and finish a sketchbook every 6 months or so, roughly, and that was very easy for me to do and consistent for me to do, but the problem with that was I was only working in one sketchbook at a time, which is kind of exhausting, especially because in doing that, I always get to a point in the sketchbook where I'm really dissatisfied with either the paper, the size is either too big or too small compared to what I want to be working on, just like a lot of frustration in doing that. And like low-key, the reason I would do that is so I would be able to consistently put out a sketchbook tour video every 6 months or so, because they're generally the ones that do best on my channel, so I wanted to be able to put them out consistently, but at a certain point that was like taking away from my enjoyment using sketchbooks. So when I finished my most recent one, and I think maybe a little bit before that as well, I started just using a bunch of different sketchbooks. I think I have like 5 work in progress sketchbooks, minus this Mossery one because I just finished it, but I also have a bunch of blank sketchbooks I want to try out here and there, so I've definitely loosened my mindset around sketchbooks, and I'm more comfortable just going at my own pace and going back and forth between many sketchbooks. And now that we're finally doing a tour of the Mossery sketchbook, I can give my final thoughts on it. And like all of them are negative. So I've made a couple of videos that I've just been using this sketchbook on my channel. And in those videos, every single time I've talked about the struggles that I've had with this paper. If you haven't seen the videos, to kind of summarize it, the only mediums that I have discovered that work well on this paper are colored pencils, alcohol markers, and gel pens. Nothing water-based works well at all on this paper. It is absolutely garbage. Watercolors dry the second you put them on the paper. They leave this weird grainy effect. It desaturates watercolors like nobody's business. The paper will actually bleed through, like watercolors will bleed through to the other side of an individual sheet, which is something I have never experienced on mixed media paper because this is Mossery's mixed media paper. They do have a cotton watercolor paper option, but because this was a gift, I specifically asked for the mixed media paper because it was less expensive, and as far as I'm concerned, the Mossery sketchbooks are like pretty expensive for what they are because you are paying for like the aesthetics of it and the brand, and like they're very popular, but they're pretty expensive for one sketchbook. I know they sell refills for the inside, but I'm the kind of person who would not want to like switch out sketchbook refills. I'd rather just have like one complete with a cover sketchbook and then just get a different one. But anyways, so I really struggled with the sketchbook. Like I said, watercolors worked horrendously on it. My water-based Tombow markers, which are one of my favorite mediums to work with, also worked horribly on this. It desaturated the colors like 2 layers the markers would eat at the paper, which very uncommon for mixed media paper. I've never had any kind of mixed media paper that performed this poorly, and thankfully, because I talked about this in my previous videos, I did get such an interesting mix of comments. I had so many people saying that they had the same exact issues, they were really dissatisfied with both the cotton paper and the mixed media paper, and then I also had comments saying like, hey, this is really weird. Like, there's probably something wrong with this paper. I don't remember the exact terms because, quite frankly, I'm not very familiar with the actual, like, manufacturing process of paper / things that go wrong with paper that make it not the way that it should be. But a lot of people were like, hey, like, it should not behave this way. There was probably an issue with the paper. So recently I emailed Mossery and I was just like, hey, I have a YouTube channel and I've made some videos, and some people have agreed with this and some people have disagreed with this. So I just wanted to know, like, is this how your paper normally behaves, or is this possibly from a bad batch? And as it turns out, around the time that this was purchased, the representative I talked to said that they were having issues with bad batches, but because the sketchbook itself was purchased, I think I got this in December of 2020 for Christmas, but because it was purchased as long ago as it was, there wasn't anything that they were able to or going to do about it, which kind of makes sense because it's like, yeah, I get it was purchased a long time ago, so you can't send me a new one or give me some kind of replacement or whatever, but also at the same time that really sucks. And especially considering, like, from the standpoint of everyone else who received a sketchbook from this bad batch of paper, most people don't have any kind of audience where people will hear their complaints and see their complaints and what problems they're having with a specific paper. So I'm sure there's a ton of people out there who got paper from this bad batch in their sketchbook and they just assumed that's how the Mossery paper was, so they were turned off from the company, or they just really didn't like the paper. Like, I don't know, it's just like disappointing in that sense, and especially being like, hey, is this an issue? Oh yeah, it's an issue, but we're not going to do anything about it. Like, I understand that it was purchased a really long time ago, so it makes sense that they can't do anything about it, or they won't do anything about it. It's just very upsetting because I had such a hard time working with the sketchbook and it was just so disappointing. And knowing that it's a bad batch of paper is nice because I know that this isn't what their paper normally behaves like. And for that reason, I'm like, oh, okay, like, that's good, but like, I can't recommend them because I don't know what their paper normally behaves like, and also their sketchbooks are super expensive. So it's just like kind of a bad experience with them on that end. So I don't think personally I'm gonna buy another Mossery sketchbook just because, like, they're really expensive and this was a bad experience, which is kind of a one-off because it's a bad batch. But yeah, that's my experience with the Mossery sketchbook. I suffered through this sketchbook. I played around a lot with this sketchbook though, because at a certain point I just kind of stopped caring about having like super nice finished pieces in it, which is something with sketchbooks that I don't really strive for a ton to begin with, but I just had a lot of fun playing around in this sketchbook and just like doing super messy doodles and product planning or thumbnailing. I feel like the more and more I progress with my sketchbooks, especially recently, I'm doing less and less finished pieces in my sketchbooks and saving that more like time invested artwork into doing things that are on loose sheets of paper so I can turn it into prints or stickers or just make something on a loose sheet of paper that is nicer quality instead of in any kind of sketchbook. So it's just been very interesting to see that kind of change over time because I used to do like 99% of my artwork in my sketchbook, so it's just very, very different for me. If you guys are interested in any of my other sketchbook tours, I'll leave a playlist in the description box below. I have sketchbook tours going back to like probably like 2018 maybe. I have so many sketchbook tours on my channel, so check those out if you guys are interested. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my rambling and ranting about Mossery sketchbooks. I'm very excited to have finally finished this one so I can move on to some kind of bound sketchbook and work on those because I am so much more happy working with bound sketchbooks. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.